Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Houghton, and this is the third video in my series, The 1215 Project. And so today, as I indicated at the end of my last video, I am going to turn away temporarily from the history of English constitutional development and talk instead about my proposal for a balanced budget amendment. And the reason I think that we need a balanced budget amendment is that I don't think that we can trust our elected officials to balance the budget on their own. They seem to have, by their performance, indicated that they're not going to do that. And I think a balanced budget is important for two reasons. First, I think it makes for a stronger America. Obviously, when you're in trouble, then it's good to be able to borrow money. And but the thing that makes that possible is that you are not borrowing money all the time. You have a very low debt, and then when you actually are in trouble and need it, then you can borrow money. And second of all, it's a more moral policy, because you shouldn't really borrow money that you don't need to pay back. And with a debt that stands at as basically now larger than annual GDP, there's a real question about whether it's ever going to be paid back. Certainly not in full because of inflation. So I think we need a balanced budget amendment. And I think that in order to have one, we need a simple one, because people are not going to support an amendment to the Constitution that they don't understand. So we need a simple rule that everyone can understand. And the rule that I'm basically proposing is this: that in every year, Congress be restricted to allocating, to appropriating no more in that year than they received in the previous year in tax revenue, except that obviously any excess can be appropriated to pay off the principal sum of the national debt. That will mean that basically every year we will start paying down a portion of the debt. And then there will need to be a few exceptions to that. And the first obvious one is, what about recessions? So the first exception to the rule is that if the last year's revenue is when the revenue 2 years previously is greater than the revenue from last year, then the larger amount can be appropriated. That will prevent prevent a cut in federal spending from making a recession worse. And the second rule, obviously, is that the second exception to the rule is that if the United States is in a declared war with a country that either A, has nuclear weapons, or B, is more than at least half as large by population as the United States, then the rule is suspended until the conclusion of a general peace. Now, unfortunately, because of political division in the country, I'm afraid that would ideally be all we would need. But unfortunately, because of political divisions, I think there's some trust issues that might come up. For example, Democrats might think, well, if we pass this, the Republicans then might start cutting taxes every year, so that they would always be able to continue deficit spending, because every year the tax revenue received in the previous year would be greater than the tax revenue received in this year. Now, I'm not sure that that's really a valid objection. I'm not sure that the Republicans would do that, but we could make a rule that until the principal of the national debt is paid down, that it would take, say, a 60% majority to pass, 60% supermajority to pass any tax cut. And then the Republicans might look at that and say, but wait a second, that's going to mean that the Democrats, this is going to be a one-way ratchet on taxes. So to prevent that from happening, I think we need a rule that until the debt is paid down, that no new tax will come into effect until an election of representatives has intervened. So that will prevent the supermajority requirement from becoming a one-way ratchet, because then, you know, the people who are against the increase can go off and campaign against it, and you know, presumably get a majority to stop it. Obviously, not only will the election have to intervene, but then will have to be reapproved by the newly elected Congress. So that's my basic proposal. And having made that proposal, I want to say this is not like an incredibly complicated rule. It's a really simple one. And it's not a really strict rule, but that I've done some calculations on it. And if we had followed that rule for the last 25 years, the national debt would be $3 trillion, which is about 14% of GDP, rather than greater than the annual GDP of the United States. To put it another way, that would be enough money that, what I meant to say was that the interest that would have been saved from not having such a huge debt would be $5.5 trillion, which is enough to have bought a third of what the borrowing the money actually bought. Like, we would have saved so much money in interest payments that we could have still gotten, though obviously at a slightly later date, a third of what we bought with the money that we borrowed. Or to put it another way, we could have gotten 275 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers from the saved money, or the saved interest payments, which is 4 times more than the number of Arleigh Burke destroyers we actually bought in total. In conclusion, I think that there's a real need for a balanced budget amendment, and I think this is, you know, a real possible one. And so I'd love to hear back people's feedback on this idea, and I will attach to this video a copy of the proposed amendment, the text. As I say, I look forward to hearing from you. As to my next video, I'm going to be going back to English constitutional development, and I look forward to that, and that may take a little longer, because those are usually a bit longer video, and take a little bit more effort in splicing them together, as I, you know, inevitably make mistakes that I want to cut out. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Bye.